I never imagined that after 5 years, the boy waiting at the bus stop would change everything. I will never forget the day everything fell apart. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of rain and my own anxiety. I felt it in my bones, the tension crackling like electricity. There he was, the boy with the wild curls, shadowed by the flickering streetlight. I had seen him countless times, always lost in thought, eyes scanning the shadows, as if searching for something just out of reach. His presence was a riddle, a mystery I was drawn to but dared not solve. Each day felt like a performance, our lives intertwining without words, only glances. My heart raced as I approached the bus stop, the patter of raindrops mixing with my rapid heartbeat. I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. I ached to know him, to break the silence that wrapped around us like a veil. But fear held me back. I was trapped in my own head, playing it safe. Behind me, the bustling sounds of the city faded into a soft hum, but right then, the world punctured into stillness. People bustled past us, their shadows colliding in the gloom. A couple laughed nearby, their joy stark against the weight I felt. My mother always said the city was a lonely place, but I had never truly understood it until that moment. I caught a glimpse of myself in the reflection of the bus window, eyes wide, a tremble in my hands. The usual warmth of the glow from the streetlight felt cold. What was it about him? The way he seemed to be both here and somewhere far away. I could almost hear the whispers of his thoughts. Was he just as lost? Each day felt like we were waiting for something unspeakable, something life-changing. Then, as the bus approached, he looked my way. The glimmer in his eyes sparked a fire in my chest. His lips parted slightly, as if he wanted to say something. I held my breath. Time slowed, my heart clamored against my ribs. But before I could grasp the moment, a loud horn blared, followed by the screech of tires. Everything shattered, there was chaos. The bus driver swerved wildly, people shouting. I felt the world tilt, a gut-wrenching dread. The boy's eyes widened in fear, and in that split second before everything collided, I saw in him an urgent plea, connection, raw and beautiful. Just then, an explosion of sound filled my ears. My heart dropped as I watched the bus come to a halt, the metal groaning. I immediately felt the weight of what could happen. I stood frozen, my mind racing through possible outcomes, my chest tightening like a vice. And just like that, life, my ordinary life, teetered on the brink of disaster. Would he be okay? Was I about to lose the one person who had, without even knowing, captivated me? I wished I could move, to reach out and save him, but all I could do was stand there, paralyzed by fear. Everything had changed in a heartbeat. Would we still be strangers after this? Or would this moment blast us into something unimaginable? A rocky path lay ahead. But I had to know. Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. The piercing sound of sirens drowned out the chaos of the moment, but all I could focus on was the boy's face twisted with fear and confusion as the bus came to a stop, shuddering like a wounded beast. Time lingered in a stuttering motion, as if the world held its breath along with me. My pulse echoed in my ears, loud and frantic, urging me to act, yet I remained rooted to the pavement, my eyes locked onto him. As the doors of the bus swung open, a rush of people poured out, some filing past me in frenzied panic, but I only had eyes for him. He stood there, still, stunned, until he turned slightly and met my gaze. There was chaos all around, yet in that one moment, amidst the panic, we found a refuge. His expression transformed from fear to a flicker of recognition, as if he could see something in me that was buried beneath layers of ordinary life. A rush of warmth enveloped me, almost painful in its intensity. Are you okay? I finally managed to say, my voice sounding foreign in my own ears. He blinked, stunned, and nodded hesitantly. The tremor in his hands betrayed the calm he tried to project. I stepped closer, closing the distance between us, instinctively reaching out as if to pull him from the brink of whatever abyss this moment had opened. Just as I extended my hand, a paramedic rushed past us, shouting for help. "Move back. Give us some space," was all I heard before the urgency of the moment crashed back down on me. I dropped my hand, retreating slightly as his gaze flickered away, searching for the noise, a hint of panic returning to his posture. "Stay right here," I urged, almost breathless. I wanted to follow him, but my feet felt heavy, glued to the ground, caught in a web of fear and longing. He glanced back at me, his brow knitted in concern, then turned his attention to the growing crowd, feverishly trying to decipher their reactions. I could sense that same internal battle within him. Was he supposed to run or stay put, to push through his fear or let it rule him? Suddenly, he took a step back toward me, defiance blooming in his eyes. "We should help," he exclaimed, the urgency in his voice resonating with my own buried instincts. The rising tide of adrenaline propelled me forward. "What can we do?" I asked, surprised at the strength of my own voice amidst the turmoil. I hadn't realized until now that I wanted to be a part of something, to break free from the shackles of my own hesitation, but before he could answer, an elderly lady wobbled past, gripping her shopping bag tightly. She looked lost, eyes darting around in confusion. The boy turned to her and said softly, "Are you okay? Do you need help?" I watched in awe as he stepped away from the chaos and reached out to her. It was a small act, but in that moment, it was monumental. Seeing his empathy instilled a flicker of hope in me, reminding me that even in the most chaotic situations, kindness could find a path through the dark. As he helped the lady steady herself, I felt a swell of emotion welling within me, a mixture of admiration and yearning. He radiated a warmth that drew people toward him, but the reality of the moment gnawed at my heart. I was just a spectator in an unfurling tragedy while he was jumping into the fray, proving to be someone far beyond the boy I had only observed from a distance. A figure emerged from the crowd, and suddenly a chill crawled down my spine as I realized it was a familiar face, someone I never expected to see again. My father. My heart raced, fear intertwining with confusion as memories of our last encounter surfaced with stunning clarity. We hadn't spoken in months, our relationship fragile under the weight of unspoken words and unresolved hurt. "What are you doing here?" I demanded, my voice wavering between disbelief and anger. The boy glanced between us, uncertainty cracking the connection we had finally begun to forge. "I came to find you," my father replied, a tense urgency in his voice. "There were reports of an accident. I wanted to ensure you were safe." As I stood there, staring into the eyes of the man who had once felt like a stranger in my life, the emotional landscape shifted once more, a tempest of unresolved feelings brewing just beneath the surface. Everything I had begun to build with the boy at the bus stop now felt overshadowed by the re-emergence of my past, threatening to swallow all hope. A reminder of the fragility of connection in a world that felt too big and isolating. The boy approached me and asked softly, "Are you all right?" His gaze was filled with sincere concern, the chaos behind us fading momentarily. I don't know," I whispered, the weight of my father's presence looming over us, pressing down like an anvil. But just as I opened my mouth to say more, a loud crack of thunder roared through the air, the heavens releasing their wrath upon the city. In an instant, the world outside blurred, rain pouring heavily, merging chaos with the surreal atmosphere we found ourselves in. And in that storm, I realized, even with all my hesitations and fears, I needed to choose the path I wanted to walk, whether to retreat back into the safety of my old life or step into the unknown with the boy who had already changed everything. What had started as a simple bus stop encounter had now spiraled into an explosive nexus of uncertainty, and all I could do was wait for the thunder to settle before the truth unraveled. The rain pounded against the pavement, each drop a reminder of the chaos swirling in my mind. As I stood there, caught between my father's weary gaze and the boy's unwavering concern, the world around me seemed to dissolve. The bustling crowd, now soaked and restless, felt like a distant echo. I closed my eyes, trying to escape the weight of both their expectations. "What do you mean you wanted to find me?" I finally asked, forcing the words past the lump in my throat. My father shifted uncomfortably, the lines on his face deepening as he struggled for the right response. "I thought we should talk. There's so much we haven't addressed, so much that has been unsaid," he said hesitantly, as if each word was a fragile glass ornament teetering on the edge of a shelf. A shiver coursed through me. His attempts to bridge our chasm were almost painful. "Talk about what? The way you walked out of our lives?" I snapped, the frustration spilling over and filling the air with an electric tension. I was tired of unanswered questions and half-hearted apologies. Before he could respond, the boy caught my eye again, his presence like a lifebuoy amid the storm. "Hey," he said softly, "it's okay. Take your time." His voice wrapped around me, a gentle reminder that I didn't have to carry this burden alone. I wanted to lean into his warmth, to share my darkness and let him pull me through. It felt so right to want to confide in him, yet here was my father, a distressing reminder of my past choices, a ghost that refused to fade. My heart ached, torn between the comfort of the boy's compassion and the tumult of familial obligation. "Why now?" I pressed on, addressing my father, a wild mix of anger and hurt coursing through my veins. "Why after everything? You just expect me to drop everything and listen to you?" His shoulders slumped under the weight of my words, his eyes glistening with a depth of emotion that I rarely saw. "I guess I've been lost too," he said, his voice breaking. "These past few months without you, I didn't realize how important you were to me until it was too late." A moment of silence hung between us, save for the rain's relentless drumbeat. It was a statement I'd always longed to hear, yet now it felt coated in uncertainty, like trying to fit together pieces of a puzzle that never seemed to match. All my defenses were swallowing me whole, pulling me back as I forged ahead. Then, unexpectedly, the boy stepped closer, offering me a piece of what felt like a lifeline. "You don't have to choose right now," he said gently, turning his gaze from my face to my father's. "Take your time to sort this out. We can stay here together, amidst the storm, until you're ready." Despite the chaos engulfing us, his words felt like warmth in the cold rain, a flicker of hope that pricked at the edges of my heart. I met his steady gaze and felt the tug of our budding connection, something I hadn't fully acknowledged until now. The boy was being a light in my darkness, madness and clarity intertwining seamlessly, but just as I began to feel anchored to that light, a loud crash interrupted our fragile moment. A nearby lamppost fell under the relentless gusts of wind, crashing down onto the street where a group of people stood. Shouts of terror erupted, fracturing the moment's stillness into chaos once again. The fear in the boy's eyes matched mine as the realization settled. I was faced with having to act, to confront whatever was swirling just beneath the surface. "Go!" I shouted instinctively. "We have to help." Without a second thought, I rushed toward the fallen pole, adrenaline thrumming through my veins, pulling both the boy and my father alongside me. There was no time for hesitation now, just an unyielding drive to be part of something bigger, something precious. In that split second, amid the chaos, I felt the old bonds fray between my father and me, a glimpse of the path we could wander together. But as my hands reached out to help lift the pole and rescue those pinned beneath the weight of uncertainty, a haunting realization flickered back to me. This moment could lead to something transformative, or it could deepen the rift already between us. And then, just as the last glimmers of hope gathered in my heart, a voice cut through the clamor, sharp as glass. "Watch out." My eyes widened as I turned, time slowing as fear flooded back in, shock freezing me in place. The storm wasn't the only thing to worry about. The real tempest was brewing right in front of me, ready to unleash itself in ways I had yet to fathom. I braced myself for what was coming, knowing that the most pivotal moment of my life was about to unfold, and all I could do was fight to stand my ground in the storm. The surge of adrenaline flooded my veins as I turned toward the voice that had shattered the fragile moment. Time seemed to elongate, like the stillness before a storm. I could feel my heart thrumming in my chest, threatening, wild. The boy next to me had already shifted into motion, his instincts kicking in as he pulled me from the path of potential disaster. "Run!" he shouted, his urgency grinding against the frantic energy in the air. As I stumbled backward, I caught a glimpse of what had triggered that warning. Another lamppost, swaying dangerously, threatened to collapse too. The figure of a man further down the street was pointing at it, his face a mask of sheer terror. I could see the fear radiating from those around us, people frantically trying to find safety in the downpour, while the street transformed into a terrifying scene of chaos and uncertainty. Amidst the tumult, I glimpsed my father, his face pale as he struggled to keep his footing. My mind whirled, every bone in my body screaming at me to help him. Yet, I felt firmly rooted in place, torn between my loyalties. Would he even want my help? The memory of our childhood faded into the backdrop, leaving only the weight of our unresolved tension hanging heavy in the air. "Let's go!" the boy yelled again, his voice cutting through my inner turmoil. He grabbed my hand, as if tethering me to sanity amidst the ensuing frenzy. I could feel the warmth of his grip anchoring me, and suddenly, amidst the screams and swirling rain, I realized this was more than just an instinctual act of survival. It was a glimpse of our connection coursing between us. We tore away from the chaotic scene, but not without throwing one last glance at my father, who was shouting something I couldn't hear over the cacophony. The distance between us felt insurmountable, a chasm forged from hurt and misunderstanding stretching like a black hole in my heart. Yet, as we ran, I couldn't shake the feeling that somehow, painfully, I was still tethered to him. We found refuge in a narrow alley that blocked the worst of the rain, its stones slick and glistening beneath our feet. I leaned against the cold wall, gasping for breath, trying to process the chaos that had become my reality. The boy stood beside me, eyes wide, his breathing quickening in rhythm to my own. That was intense," he said, his voice trembling slightly yet laced with an earnestness that made every word matter. He searched my face, searching for signs of unsteadiness but also something more profound, validation, perhaps. "I didn't mean to," I started, the shame bubbling in my throat. Shame for freezing in fear, for hesitating when I should have acted. It was as if the whole world had been laid bare, and I was left standing in the wreckage of who I used to be. "It's okay," he reassured softly, brushing a damp strand of hair from my forehead as if it were an everyday occurrence. "None of us are immune to moments like that. You act at it was brave." "But, he faltered, the boy's confidence slipping for just a heartbeat. "What about your dad?" The mention of my father sent a pang through my chest, a sharp reminder of everything unresolved. "I don't know," I whispered, the weight of my indecision gnawing at me. "I don't know how to move past what happened. I don't know if I can even forgive him." At that moment, a flicker of something bright emerged in the depths of my confusion, the boy's steadfastness. He took a step closer, sincerity alight in his gaze. "You don't have to figure it all out right now. Just breathe. Whatever comes next, you don't have to face it alone." His words felt like gentle hands cupping my heart, bringing a softness I hadn't realized I desperately longed for. But just then, a sharp crack of thunder split the sky, pulling me back into mounting worry. "What if he needs me?" I blurted out, desperation clawing at my insides. "There's still time," he replied, anchoring me with a resolute gaze that felt like a promise without words. "It's a mess out there, but you're stronger than you think. You just have to decide." And then it struck me, a realization that felt like an epiphany breaking through a canopy of doubt. The path forward was uncertain, but perhaps it wasn't solely about forgiving my father, it was also about forgiving myself, for the choices I made, for the anger that consumed me. With the storm still raging overhead, I felt my resolve strengthening in spite of my fears. But then, as I began to formulate a plan to return, another scream ripped through the air, sharper and more piercing than before. "Help!" It was a voice I recognized, familiar and haunting, and it sent cold tendrils of dread curling around my heart. It was my father. Time froze. The implications crashed down like the rain around us, and I felt the air thicken with tension, choking me. What was unfolding now was bigger than I'd anticipated or hoped. I could feel my heart pounding as I turned to the boy, a silent question passing between us. "Are you ready?" he asked, and for a fraction of a second, I hesitated, sensing the gravity of what lay ahead, a treacherous avenue lined with guilt, confrontation, and a choice that could alter everything, and like a gust catching the tide, fate pushed me forward into the storm once more, every instinct telling me I was running out of time. I had to choose, and in that choice, everything would change, all while the storm continued to rage around us, unfettered and chaotic. The rain poured harder as if the heavens themselves were weeping, a fluid cascade of emotion mirroring my turmoil. Each drop felt like a reminder of the years that had slipped through my fingers, years filled with unresolved feelings, anger, and an aching void that seemed impossible to fill. I couldn't remember the last time my father's voice had been anything but a tempest of snide remarks and disappointed echoes. "Let's go," the boy urged, his hand still grasping mine, an unspoken promise in his hold. I could feel my pulse quicken, the thuds echoing like a war drum in my chest. The craving to run was primal, but the plea for help clawed at my instincts. My father's voice, frantic yet filled with a depth of desperation I hadn't heard before, tangled with guilt, and the nagging questions that swirled in my mind threatened to overwhelm me. What was I supposed to feel? Anger? Fear? Was I ready for whatever lay ahead? As I stepped back into the chaos, a wave of unease washed over me. The streets were a flood of confusion, people darted everywhere, their silhouettes indistinct figures in the rain-soaked haze. I searched the crowd, desperate for a glimpse of my father. Was he still standing out there in the storm, or had dread claimed him, too? "We can try to get to him," the boy said gently, perceptive eyes scanning the crowd with purpose. Each word felt like an ember igniting the dim hope tucked away inside me. Maybe it was possible. Maybe, just maybe, I could bridge the chasm that yawned open between my father and me. "Okay," I managed to say, my voice surprised at its steadiness. The boy's encouraging presence emboldened me to face what I had avoided for so long. But as we moved through the throng, weaving between frantic faces, another voice called out in undiluted pain, and my heart lurched like a boat caught in a tempest. That I turned, and the world seemed to still. "Someone help. Please." The man's silhouette straightened as he staggered, lurching forward. It was hard to see through the sheets of rain, but there was no mistaking the desperate plea that emanated from him. "Dad." The word tore from my lips before I could process it, my breath frozen in my chest. The boy squeezed my hand tighter, and together we rushed toward the voice, but fear clawed at me with each step. What if my father was as lost to me as the years had been? What if I was simply chasing the ghost of a man who had dragged my heart through the mud? I pushed through the crowd, my heart racing with a mix of dread and an unwilling hope. "Dad," I breathed again, louder this time, propelled by the desperate rhythm of my heartbeat, and then I saw him, father, drenched and trembling, one arm clutching his chest as though bracing against a storm that had taken more than just his footing. His eyes met mine, and for that fleeting moment, they were stripped of their usual armor. Beneath the pain and the fear, I caught a glimpse of the man I used to know, and it tethered me solidly to the ground. "What happened?" I shouted, urgency threading my voice. That he staggered again, the fear in his eyes replaced with something more profound. "Shame? Regret?" I didn't see it coming," he gasped, and the words felt loaded, like they held years of history that invited questions I wasn't sure I was ready to ask. Just then, a sudden jolt of electricity surged through the air, and the sky unleashed a torrential downpour that seemed intent on swallowing everything whole. A nearby lamppost swayed dangerously and crashed to the ground, but we were too caught in each other's gaze to notice or care. My father's vulnerability, raw and exposed, rendered the chaos around me muted. As my father struggled to regain his balance, a dreadful moment of realization swept over me. He wasn't just in pain, something was dreadfully wrong. As I moved closer, I could see his face pale, and a line of blood trickling down the side of his brow. "Dad!" I cried out, panic lacing my words as I reached for him, but as I stepped forward, the boy beside me held me back gently. "Wait," he cautioned, voice a mix of concern and urgency. "Look, the crowd is getting dangerous. We need to decide. Are you ready to help him? Or do you need to step back?" My heart sank at his words, the weight of the choice crashing down as the realization of what choosing could mean settled over me like a heavy blanket. What do I do? I whispered, feeling lost once again amidst the tumult. My father looked at me, eyes wide with a mixture of fear and regret, and in that moment, time felt unfathomably cruel. The distance that had once only been physical was now emotional, and I felt the chasm between us extending beyond the rain-soaked street. I am so sorry, he breathed, and I could see it wasn't just for this moment. The boy leaned in closer, his voice barely audible over the storm. You can confront him. You are stronger than you know, but in that moment, as the world threatened to close in around us, I felt the ground shift beneath my feet, the realization that I might be stepping into a storm far greater than I understood, and one that could alter not just my relationship with my father, but everything I thought I knew about the past, and about forgiveness. Dad, I finally said, a shaky resolve framing my words. I was trembling, uncertainty rippling in my veins, but the plea hanging on my lips was as necessary as the air that filled them. I opened my mouth to say more, to bridge the distance that had grown thick, but before I could complete my thought, a sound above us crackled. A bolt of lightning seared across the sky, illuminating the street in blinding brightness, and then, the ground shook with an unprecedented roar. The moment enveloped me in chaos once more. A flash of panic coursed through the crowd, voices rising in alarm as people stumbled backwards, and my father's eyes widened in sheer terror. As the dust settled, I realized whatever I was about to step into was not just about healing, it was about survival in a world that was spiraling out of control. This would not just change us today, but echo long into our futures, and my heart raced with the uncertainty of it all. And in that instant, the boy beside me was gone, swept into the depths of the flood of confusion. I was standing there alone, heart pounding wildly as dark clouds descended heavy with unanswered questions, and as the storm raged on, I could only wonder, would I find my father, and could we ever truly confront the ghosts that haunted us both? With the tumult of the storm pressing around me, I stood paralyzed, the chaotic energy swirling in the air as if the world were at once falling apart and begging to be put back together. My father's eyes were glazed over with a mixture of panic and pain, and I could feel my own heart racing beneath the weight of those desperate moments, the storm coiling tightly around us. Please, help me, he gasped, and something within me fractured at the sound of his quaking voice. I cast one last glance at the place where the boy had stood, hoping he would reappear, that some invisible tether might bring him back into the fray. But the space was empty, leaving me teetering on a jagged edge of uncertainty. Dad, I want to help you, I said, my voice trembling between the desire to bridge the chasm and the towering dread that loomed before me. As I reached for him, the tumultuous memories filled with anger and hurt surged forward. Could I really step into the depths of our collective past, where all our grievances lay like dormant wounds waiting for the wrong touch? He took a shuddering breath, bracing himself against an iron railing that had been corroded by years of neglect. Blood continued to trickle from his temple, a bright streak against his pale skin that pulled at my heart, a heart that had longed to forgive, even while it had held on to anger like a crutch. I never wanted things to get this far, he said, the words wrapping around my heart like a long-forgotten embrace. Each syllable was an admission, a crack in the armor he had worn for so long. It tugged at the raw edges of my soul, begging for understanding. Then why did you? I dared to ask, the pain spilling forth like an open wound. Why did you push me away? Why didn't you fight for us? His face contorted, layers of grief flaring in his eyes. I didn't know how. I didn't realize I was losing you until it was too late. His arms shook, and I could see how every word cost him something. It was my father's vulnerability offering a glimmer of hope, but the deeper wounds remained unaddressed, lurking beneath the surface. The sharp crack of thunder split the air, and I felt the world tremble anew around us. But something unexpected shifted deep within me. As the sky roared its discontent, I found a flicker of empathy igniting. The boy's parting words echoed, the strength within began to swell. Are you ready to confront this? I don't want it to end like this, I whispered, the echo of my childhood slipping through my fingers like sand. I stepped closer, closing the distance that had become suffocating. I want to understand. I want to hear your side. He looked at me then, a flicker of hope ignited in his tear-brimmed eyes. But it felt fragile and I feared it might shatter just as quickly. The ground seemed unsteady, and my mind raced with the shadows of past arguments and unresolved grievances. My heart cracked under the pressure of choice. The storm grew louder, the fierce winds whipping through the streets and carrying the anguished shouts of the crowd around us. One fearless soul plunged forward, trying to help those nearest to him, and a small spark of courage ignited within me. "Help me up," I said to my father, who clutched an unseen edge of hope for the first time. "Let's find safety together." He nodded, a mixture of relief and shame coloring his features as I pulled him to his feet. As we moved through the crowd, I struggled against the tide of fear that wanted to pull us apart, a desperate need to turn back, to hide from the chaos instead of confronting it. But we pressed forward together, inching closer to the mouth of the storm that was not just weather overhead but the gaping wounds of our past. Each passerby seemed to pulse with an unspoken anger, voices clashing like thunderbolts over our heads, yet I locked onto my father's gaze, determined not to let go. Then suddenly, as if the universe were conspiring against us, an even larger surge of bodies pushed past, separating us momentarily. I turned frantically, searching the sea of faces for my father, heart laden with dread. The space surrounding me spun with intensity as the rain fell heavier, each droplet a reminder of the tumult we were trying to escape. "Dad!" I shouted, but my voice was swallowed by the storm, a mere whisper lost in the howling winds. Panic flooded my veins as people surged past, slipping away like shadows. And then, among the chaos, I glimpsed a familiar face reflected in the puddles at my feet. It was the boy, the one who had offered so much without asking for anything in return. He had made me feel seen even when I felt invisible to the world. Yet now he was standing still in the downpour, his gaze fixed intently just beyond me, as if witnessing the unraveling of the very fabric of connection we had tried to forge. "Look out!" he cried suddenly, breaking the haze that my heart seized as I turned, only to see a hulking shadow barreling toward me, the weight of the moment crashing back in like a rogue wave. It was too late. There was no way to sidestep this oncoming threat. The world tilted on its axis. The power of the storm surrounded me, the pulse of the crowd guided by confusion and urgency, and just like that, everything shattered around us. In the midst of fear and pain, I felt my heart wrench as the boy's wide eyes locked onto mine over the scrambling chaos. There was something unspoken in that glance, something profound, and then in the blink of an eye, he was gone, the crowd swallowing him whole. No. I screamed, but the roar of thunder drowned my cries. My father's hand found mine again, but this time, I felt the jagged edges of our shared grievances crumbling beneath the force of a new fear. The storm thundered as my father's grip on me tightened, and together we maneuvered through the chaos, but the threat of loss loomed heavier than ever. Each heartbeat echoed the uncertainty of our future, and in the heart of the chaos, there remained not just the question of whether I could forgive him but also if I could find the boy again. The revelations we had yet to face still loomed over us, tethered deep in the storm, as the rain poured down relentlessly, washing away the strength I had just begun to muster. Would we find each other, or was this moment merely another brush with the horrors of what was to come? And as the lightning flickered ominously overhead, I realized the truth: sometimes, it takes a storm to reveal the paths still unwalked. But at what cost? The chaos continued roiling around us as I stumbled through the downpour, my father's frail hand gripping mine as if I were his only lifeline. Shadows of uncertainty pulled at my heart with every stride, swallowing the glimmers of hope that had begun to kindle. I yearned to spot the boy, to understand his significance in this thrumming storm of emotions. "Keep moving," my father shouted over the cacophony, though his voice trembled. Each step felt heavier, and within me, a tempest brewed, not of wind and rain, but of unresolved pain. I wanted to confront the ghosts of our past together, but the moment we had almost shared felt like a fleeting dream, one that could slip between our fingers once more. "Where did he go?" I gasped, not completely sure if I'd asked my father or the heavens. "He was right here." But the storm held its secrets closer. "Who?" my father asked, his brow furrowing in confusion, drenched by the torrent yet seeking clarity amidst the chaos. "The boy. He saw me. He was there." I thought I couldn't even finish the thought. A sense of melancholy intertwined with fear gripped my chest. I felt so close, yet heartbreakingly far, as if the boy were another life I had missed. Focus on us. Right now, we need to get to safety. With his words came an almost instinctual need to comply, but just as I diverted my focus back to our urgent escape, another bolt of lightning cracked through the sky, illuminating a glimmer of movement at the edge of a nearby alley. "Dad, wait!" I cried out, pulling away, driven by an unquenchable thirst for answers. I hurried towards the elusive flicker, my heart racing, almost urging me forward as I bypassed the remnants of the crowd. "Where are you going?" My father called after me, panic threading his voice, but my legs wouldn't follow his logic. The prospect of the boy's return beckoned me like a moth to a flame. I slipped behind the damp brick walls, the world between us dimming as I entered the alley. Here, the air hung heavy, saturated with the scent of rain, ash, and something sweetly familiar that drew me deeper, and then, there he was, the boy leaning against the wall, a silhouette that somehow seemed to defy the storm's insanity. His presence was a language of familiarity, igniting warmth in the cavernous void of uncertainty. "Are you okay?" I stammered, breathless, my heart clashing against my ribcage. He looked at me, something fragile flickering in his deep-set eyes as if he were a mirror reflecting my own swirling confusion. "You shouldn't be here," he said, his voice a mere whisper, yet edged with urgency. Why did you disappear?" I pressed, feeling the emotional tide rise within Meth's need for connection screaming louder than ever. Was he just an illusion conjured by my crumbling reality, or was there something greater at work beneath the surface? "I was looking for you," he confessed, his voice trembling slightly as he stepped forward. "I didn't want you to face this pain alone. But sometimes, we need a little chaos to find clarity." Before he could finish, a rumble of shouting erupted from the street, the crowd a distant echo inside my whirlwind mind. The words seemed laden with eerie significance, threading themselves into the fabric of all that had passed between us. "I can't keep losing you," I blurted out desperately, vulnerability spilling forth as the storm outside howled with rage. The thought of being torn away from him again sent tremors through my body, but his expression darkened, the weight of secrets pressing heavily between us. "You have to face your father," he said gently but firmly, sorrow flickering in his eyes. "There's something he needs to tell you. Something you both need to know." My pulse quickened, dread gnawed at the edges of my mind. "But I don't understand." "Neither do I," he remarked, studying me intently, frustration that mirrored my own etched into his features. "But changes happen in the storm. You just have to be brave enough to let it come." The wind screamed louder, pulling at me, eager to drag me back to my father and the unresolved chapters of our shared agony. My heart vacillated between fear and something akin to hope, all while this boy stood as a testament to the unknown journey I was yet to embrace. "That I don't want to lose you again," I cried, reaching for him, my fingers brushing against the electrified air that still separated us. He stepped back, a flicker of pain crossing his face. "You need to let me go. If you don't confront this now, you might lose a part of yourself." Before I could respond, he turned and sprinted deeper into the shadows of the alley, disappearing as abruptly as he had appeared. The storm roared defiantly outside, reclaiming the space, leaving me grappling with the silence that now enveloped me like a suffocating shroud. "Come back," I called, the words swallowed by the tempest roaring around me, but he no longer answered. Torn between my father's plea for safety and the boy who had compelled me to embrace the whirlwind of truth, I turned, feeling the weight of time pressing down as I stepped back into the chaos from which I had just come. As I rejoined my father, a new wave of understanding coursed through me, urgency mingled with fear. I could no longer avoid the reckoning that awaited. But as I locked eyes with him, I knew that no matter how daunting this chapter appeared, the storm had brought us to a reckoning, and the cost of finding our truths would no longer remain hidden in the shadows. But just as I opened my mouth to speak, a scream pierced through the air, a haunting sound that twisted the vine of dread deep inside me. Before I could process the enormity of the moment, I realized the scream belonged to someone close. "Dad!" No. A woman cried out from the distance, each syllable trembling with despair. My heart sank as my father's gaze turned in her direction, fear and uncertainty dancing across his features. And then I felt a seismic shift, not just within me, but in the heart of the storm. A new wave of revelations now awaited, and the price we would pay for truth suddenly felt all too real. The air thickened, laden with despair and urgency that pressed heavily against my chest. I bolted toward my father, confusion and fear lacing my footsteps as I followed his gaze, which had found its mark on the woman's anguished face. She was silhouetted by the flickering streetlight, the brilliance of it almost drowning her in gloom, her body trembling as she clutched her stomach, the horror escalating with the widening of her eyes. "Dad, what's happening?" The words escaped my lips in a heart-wrenching whisper. A knot of dread twisted tighter in my gut. I felt the pull of unresolved questions, mixed with the realization that whatever had just fractured the fragile calm was about to erupt. He took a sharp intake of breath, already beginning to shuffle forward as if propelled by an invisible force. "It's Janet," he croaked, panic radiating from his voice. My legs faltered. Janet, the sister I had barely known, the child lost to time and the shadows of our family's grief. The thought of her struck me like a blow, sharp and unforgiving. Janet? I echoed, the name an echo of ghosts long buried. The memory of an old photograph surfaced, a smiling girl with sun-kissed curls so reminiscent of our father, yet so distant. The rain lashed harder, drowning out the world around us as we hurried toward her. The cadence of her sobs mixed with the drumming of raindrops created a tempest within my soul, each beat resonating with the chaos that had defined our existence for so long. I felt my father's hand tighten around mine, a grounding force amid the storm. As we neared, the details sharpened, revealing the woman holding her head in her hands, trembling violently. She seemed so small against the gray backdrop of the world that had cast her aside. "Please, someone help!" she cried. Her voice cracked like brittle glass, raw and desperate as it echoed through the downpour. "Janet!" My father called, his voice straining to penetrate the veil of despair. The distance closing between us revealed not just her deep anguish, but the breadth of pain in his eyes, the longing for connection that seemed to evaporate like mist. Janet looked up, and for a moment, recognition sparked in her gaze. "Dad?" Her voice quavered, and in that single word, I felt the world shift. It was a fragile bridge formed between our past and this moment, a bridge that threatened to snap under the weight of our unresolved heartache. "Sweetheart, what happened?" His voice was choked with unshed tears as he reached for her. I stood still, merely a witness to this reunion fraught with unspoken history and guilt, a dance of lost time swirling between them, begging to be acknowledged. "I am so sorry," she gasped, shaking her head violently. I thought I could find yous again. But I lost my way." Her lament ripped through me, revealing the remnants of our fractured family, shattered in a chaotic storm of our own making. "Lost your way?" I clenched my fists, the storm outside mirrored in the tempest of emotions within. "Why didn't you come home, Janet? Why didn't you let us know?" The words tumbled out, a mixture of sorrow and anger coursing through me. "Because I didn't know how," she shouted, her distress morphing into a wild fervor. "After Mom and Dad left, everything just fell apart. I ran, I hid, I was scared." Her confession hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. I understood fear, it wrapped itself around my heart too. But as secrets tore through the fabric of our family, I needed to feel something more than sorrow. "You could have trusted us," I retorted, the tension heavy enough to almost bend the air. "It's not that simple," she cried, looking between my father and me. "I thought you'd be better off without me." I thought what? My father's voice rose, laden with a sadness that threatened to break him. "Thought you could just disappear? Do you know what it's like to lose a piece of your heart?" Her face contorted, suddenly stricken by the weight of his words. "I never wanted to leave you, I was trying to protect you. But now, look at us." The anguish and regret twisted her features, the battle between yearning for acceptance and drowning in guilt reflected in her eyes. And then the rain intensified, beating down mercilessly, almost as if it were echoing our collective despair. The world around us began to fade again, the cacophony of voices swallowed by the storm's ferocity. In that moment, I felt the boy's presence somehow lingering within me, a whisper of comfort urging me to connect the pieces. "We can still fix this," I said, trying to steady the tremor in my voice. "We can still figure this out together." A small flicker of hope passed over Janet's face, yet darkness still clung to the peripheries. "But it's not just about us," she murmured. "There's something hidden beneath all of this, something that could tear us apart once again. What could be worse than the storm surrounding us?" My heart raced at the implications, fear threading its way through my resolve. "What do you mean?" I demanded, sensing the urgency coursing through the air, threatening to erupt yet again. Before she could answer, the shadows around us seemed to thicken the oppressive darkness of secrets, and a figure stepped forth from the alley just as the final flash of lightning illuminated the night. "Dad. It's time to tell her." The voice, unmistakably familiar, echoed against the wind. It was the boy. He emerged from the void, standing resolute, his eyes piercing through the storm, locking onto my father's. His expression was one of solemnity, of understanding, and yet it bore the weight of the truth we might not be ready to face. I felt the tremors radiate through my being, the pieces of our lives skirting perilously close to the edge of revelation, and I realized this was just the beginning of a new tempest, one that threatened to lay every hidden truth bare. And the storm didn't just rage outside, it raged within us, stirring memories that would challenge not only our relationship with each other but the very foundation of our identities. Because with each truth that resurfaced, we stood to lose even more than we had already sacrificed. "Are you ready for this?" the boy asked gently, but the gravity of his question flooded the space with an inexplicable weight, and in that moment, the emotional storm deepened, and my heart sieved the truth. Some revelations could destroy or salvage everything we had left. We stood, drenched in rain and the weight of unspoken truths, as the boy's question hung heavily in the air. The world around us blurred into nothingness, reduced to a backdrop for this confrontation that promised to unravel what little we had managed to piece together. Janet's eyes widened, darting between my father and me, a storm of bewilderment brewing within her. "Ready for what?" she whispered, her voice trembling as she instinctively stepped closer to me, seeking solace amid a tempest of uncertainty. I felt the shadows encroach upon our moment, filling it with an oppressive tension that thrummed along my nerves. "The truth," the boy insisted, his gaze unwavering. There was a spark in his eyes that hinted at an understanding far beyond his years of wisdom that made my heart race, both with fear and a desperate desire for clarity. "Do I even have a choice?" Janet's voice wavered, her bravado waning under the weight of expectation. "None of us do," my father interjected, his voice raw, worn down by the years of silence that had strained our family ties. "We've danced around these demons for too long. It's time to face them." The boy nodded, as if my father's words were a cue he had been waiting for. "Then listen closely." The stillness around us shifted in response, as though the universe held its breath in anticipation. "There's a reason for everything that happened, every choice made, every bond severed. And it's time for you to understand what really drove Janet away." Sorrow crept into Janet's features, her previous defiance giving way to vulnerability. "But I was just a kid. How could I have known that my running away would hurt you all so much?" Tears glistened in her eyes as she fought to regain her composure, the weight of her past visibly caving in on her. "It's not your fault, Janet," I ventured, my heart aching for her. "But there is something more, something that may have pushed you to feel you needed to run." I looked at my father, silently urging him to unveil the burdens he'd carried alone. The cracks in his stoic facade had widened significantly since Janet's arrival, yet this was the fissure that could either purify or destroy us all. My father hesitated, clenching and unclenching his fists. "There are secrets, Janet, secrets about your mother. Things I should have told you but never did. And it's time you know the truth." His voice cracked, revealing the raw edges of his pain. Those words played on my heart like a haunting melody, reverberating with heartache and disappointment. "What truth?" Janet cried, her voice barely above a whisper. "What could possibly matter now?" "The reason for her leaving," he replied, his gaze darkening as he focused on the ground, lost in memories that danced like shadows along the pavement. The truth about her past and her struggles, things that haunted her long before you were born. Janet recoiled, a spark of anger flaring in her eyes. How could you keep that from me? How could you let me think it was my fault she was gone? The fleeting moments of hope we had forged slid through my fingers, the broken pieces of our lives swirling like windswept leaves. Sometime, my father said, his voice dropping to an anguished hush, when the burden of our own mistakes becomes too much to bear, we hide from our loved ones. I believed I was protecting you from the pain of her truth, but instead, I chained you to my silence. The rain poured down in sheets, creating a symphony of chaos that seemed to mock our attempts to reach understanding. For a heartbeat, I saw the boy's face contort in empathy, his own journey seeping through his probing gaze, memories of abandonment and longing too similar to Janet's plight. Why didn't you tell me? She whispered, the fight draining from her voice, floundering in the churning sea of lost years. I could have handled it, I needed to know, but before my father could answer, an uncanny crack of thunder overwhelmed us. It felt as though the sky itself had ripped open in protest, mimicking the tumult brewing within. I instinctively reached for Janet's hand, offering her the only anchor I could amidst the chaos. Just as I gained her attention, the boy stepped closer, his expression rearranging as he looked past us. What if I told you there's more? He said softly, eyes reflecting the storm's intensity. What if I told you there's someone else involved, someone who made all of this happen? My heart plummeted at the thought, a new layer of complexity settling heavily on our frayed edges. Who? I managed to croak, the tremor in my voice matching an unsettling fear that unfurled within me. He pointed a finger, steady and unwavering, toward the darkness beyond the flickering streetlight. A figure loomed in the distance, moving closer, drenched but resolute, pausing only when illuminated by a sudden flash of lightning. Riley, the boy stated, lips pressed together in silent resolve. My breath caught as recognition swept over me like a jolt. Riley, the other shadow I had repeatedly tried to forget, the boy who was intertwined with our family's history. The boy who had played his part in our twisted tale, one I hadn't realized was still looming in the periphery. What does he have to do with any of this? Janet demanded, a line of defiance sparking back to life within her, but my heart raced with a separate dread, waiting for the boy to answer as the shape broke through the veil of rain. Time felt suspended, a tether to the buried truths that could usher in either destruction or redemption. And at that moment, I feared we were teetering on the brink of a revelation that would uproot us all, the storm within matching the storm outside, leaving nothing untouched in its wake. I saw him then, illuminated by the flash of lightning, and dread washed over me like a wave crashing violently against the shore. Riley, the embodiment of my past I desperately tried to put behind me. He was with your mother before she left, the boy said quietly, watching my reaction closely. The words hung between us, echoing like thunder in the air. My breath caught in my throat, disbelief tightening around me. What? Janet whispered, her face draining of color. The boy nodded, his gaze unwavering. Riley was part of her life, more than you ever knew. He's tied deeply to the secrets your father kept from you, the source of your mother's struggles. The shadows loomed around us, breathing life into the unspoken. For a moment, I felt my knees buckle beneath me, the weight of the truth threatening to pull me under. Why? Janet's voice wavered, and I reached for her hand, squeezing tightly. How could he let this happen? I could see the unraveling threads of her realisha, surge of confusion washing over her like the relentless rain. My father looked visibly shaken, each word caught in the tumult of emotions swirling around him. I thought keeping you away from him would protect you from the pain, he choked out, misery etched in his features. But instead, I built a wall, a fortress of lies that only pushed you both further from the truth. Anguish mingled with realization, pain born of regret flooding the air like a toxin. And it hurt your mother deeply. She believed losing you was her only escape. I felt the boy move closer, a steady presence amid the storm. You have to realize, confronting Riley means facing not only your past, but helping heal the present. It's not just about uncovering truths, it's about freeing yourselves from the shackles of old hurts. And then, like a crack ripping through the silence, Riley stepped into the press of rain, glaring as if searching for validation in our expressions, an air of defiance surrounding him. I expected anger, a rush of emotions to surge from Janet or my father, but what I witnessed left me stunned. Those stirred feelings transformed into an unexpected vulnerability as Janet looked into Riley's eyes and broke the dam of silence. "Why didn't you tell me? I had the right to know," she burst out, the tension unraveling like a spool of thread. Guilt seeped into Riley's expression, filling the space with heaviness that felt cosmic in its reach. "I was afraid," he said, his voice low and earnest. "I thought if I told you, it would push you away further, and it's my fault she left. I loved her, and I thought if I didn't say anything, maybe you wouldn't have to suffer." His story peeled back layers of pain, revealing the complexities entwined within hearts too often drowned in silence. "Your mother was fighting a battle," he continued, "and I was caught in between. I promised her I wouldn't interfere with your lives anymore, that we'd keep our distance." "By hiding?" Janet pressed, anguish lacing her words. The storm battered against us, mirroring the sorrow in both their eyes. Riley steadied himself before answering. "She was afraid that you would see me as the reason for her leaving." The guilt ate away at her. "She never wanted you to feel the pain of our mistakes." In that moment, it was as if the walls we had cloaked ourselves in began to crumble, bit by bit. A surge of clarity swept through me. I stepped closer to Janet, feeling the raw connection we shared. Our pain was not individual but forged in the crucible of our shared history. "You weren't to blame for her leaving," I urged, yearning for her to believe me. "We all felt the weight of our silence. We can choose to break it together." The boy beside me nodded, a silent ally in this storm of revelation. His gaze flitted between Riley, Janet, and my father, his own heart a mirror of the emotions beneath the surface, a flickering light in our darkness. And then my father spoke, his voice tremoring. "We need to stop hiding. It's time we stop letting the past dictate our future." As the rain continued to pour, I took a breath, letting the revelations wash over me. The winds howled, but within that storm was a Biakona choice. We could let the gravity of yesterday tear us apart, or we could rebuild. I wanted us to reclaim our bond, to forgive and understand, regardless of the tattered remnants of our past. I turned to the boy, feeling a wave of gratitude wash over me. His unwavering presence anchored me in this tumultuous moment, serving as a reminder that the storm could lead us somewhere beautiful if we allowed it. "I don't want to lose you," I murmured softly, eyes pleading for connection once more. He stepped closer, the distance between us narrowing until I could feel the warmth radiating from him. "You won't. You'll make your choices from here on out, and I'll be with you every step of the way." A hush fell over us, reverberating like the final breath before an awakening. In that stillness, surrounded by the memories of what we had lost and the potential of what we could become, we were ready to step into the storm together, as a family, and as the skies rumbled in agreement, I understood that sometimes the past needs to unravel for the future to thrive, a lesson of resilience, discovery, and the importance of love to weather any storm. Underneath the darkened clouds, I took a step forward, not just for myself but for us all. I turned to face my father. "Together then," I said, anchoring our resolve amidst the rising tide of emotions. As we clasped hands, the darkness around us felt lighter, woven with threads of empathy and understanding, and I knew truth could be a balm. The storm was no longer just an enemy, it was a testament to our shared journey and the resilience we possessed to rebuild, and if we dared to forge ahead, love would be our shield. In that moment, I realized, we are all battles waiting to unfold, and today, we were ready to stand side by side. And above the clamor of rain, whispered between the flares of lightning, came the powerful truth that would linger long after the storm passed: sometimes you must face the chaos head-on to discover the strength you never knew existed within you.